that the country of France and Paris in particular had him light the whole city up. So when you talk about the lights of France, that was an African American man.
Bicycle frame.
Bicycle frame.
No idea.
I know. And so I didn't bring them, but I do this whole exhibit, and I can ship it to you guys, you can set it up, where those things are all, we have little miniatures. And you should just see when these kids come in, black, white kids, white parents, and they're like, really? This, you know, the spark plug, the hairbrush, everything from the electrical switch, the train track switching switch, all of these types of things that our people, American people, that didn't look like the majority have created, but we don't know. Why do I bring this up? And why do we do that exercise? Because I think what happens in the STEM fields, even now, as we say we want more women, I don't even know if that means we want more women of color. I get invited, a lot of times I'm actually looking at summits and things that are coming up, and they'll say, oh, you know, to encourage more girls to go, we want women in technology. And the panels are white men or white women, but then you get there and you say, well, I want more people of color. The other day I was of the benefit to talk to a group of environmentalists that are saying they want to work closer with the communities of color here to advance their own programs in conservationism and environmental science in support of the land that people here of color have been working for hundreds of years. We've got to first, I think, look into ourselves. I love that you trusted this space enough to even be honest in this exercise, because it's not easy to do. But as you said, it was 62 years, really it's even further back than that. Introduce some of this into your classroom. Do a little bit of extra work and find out what and who has worked in these areas that I'm working in now that does not look like me, and incorporate that into your communications. The responsibility of shifting the paradigm of who looks like what in these fields will probably not come successfully from people that look like me in these fields. It will be you. It'll be you, and it'll be you. It'll be you. You have an ear, or you have an opportunity to capture the attention of an ear that looks like yours much better than me. I'm expected to be fussing about the lack of numbers. I'm expected to be not happy. But you have this power place. It's a good thing to have. It's not, don't feel guilty, don't feel ashamed, that's over. It's now time to leverage it, to use it, to educate, to embrace, and change the face of technology so that it's shared. So that next time when I come and I say, okay, check this box, the engineer and the technologist will be just as much a woman, whether she's black or white, than just this white male. And God forbid, everybody that's black is a minister. So we won't do that either. Okay? Now I want you to tell us, we did go through your box, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We went through your boxes. Okay. Ask me whatever you want, and let me use my experience personally, and then my interactions, across these spaces to help in any way. Because I just applaud you for wanting to do this. The first steps have already been taken. You're aware that there is an issue.
So, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be politically incorrect.
And you want to share your because they're not the same. They're all different.
Yeah.
Every last one of those is a different sheet. That's just how, yes, that's just how many inventions and things we have.
So as a faculty member, I'm taking a step back, looking at the role of a faculty member and the other commitments that we have to do in terms of increasing class sizes and all, and taking the time to actually go
Absolutely.
And so that, to me, has been a struggle, as I've seen the college grow from maybe 5,000 students to 10,000, and keep thinking about getting more and more students. How do you maintain those relationships and everything else, and the pressure to publish, to have more requirements, and email and technology. And so technology is actually lessening.
Oh, I know, those interactions,
Yeah,
I know.
interactions. So 20 years ago, I encouraged my students to go online.
Yeah.
And now I'm encouraging them to unplug.
Come talk to me,
Come
right.
Talk, have face-to-face conversations. Let's forget about email.
Right.
People get really angry and they communicate.
Right.
Things are different. And so in terms of priorities, I look around here today and I look at the number of faculty members that are here and present. And so changing the narrative at an institutional level has always been difficult.
A lot of that is held, I think, and driven by fear. Change does require something of us. Change is most difficult. I worked in defense for many years, director, business process innovation, and largest profit and loss center. And I'd come in with a Six Sigma black belt hat, and I'm looking at, how are we going to remove these constraints and do this thing faster, come in under schedule, come in under budget, and make it just as good or even better. And everybody knows it needs to happen, but the first thing will be, well, this is how it's always been. Change is hard. So you've got to learn to persuade without authority. And so you're changing things, but you're not announcing that that's what's happening. You're quietly making those things happen. And someone, and make these requests for change very personal. Get people involved with you on a personal level. Identify other faculty members. They may not be here for whatever reason, but it doesn't mean there's not some others out there that feel the same way. And you find out who they are, and you find that out by just quiet. Go, bring in a donut and a cup of coffee and say, how are you handling this? People will be very honest in those spaces. They'll either say, oh, leave it alone. Oh, it's always been like this, just leave it. And then you'll hear somebody else, maybe you're with a Melissa, and she says, I know, what are we gonna do? And that's when that becomes your family in this. That becomes your safe space. And Jessica said a thing to me. She said, I need a race buddy. Now you're like, what is a race buddy? Somebody that doesn't look like me that I can talk about race shit with. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds good. But that's a strategy. You gotta identify your advocate. You gotta identify, you need a mentor in those spaces, right? Just as you're developing mentors.
So if I can chime in. So how do you navigate that without resorting to tokenism? There are very few colleagues of color on campus. So if every white colleague went to the 5 or 10 black colleagues and said, I'm struggling, how do I communicate better with students of color? All of a sudden they're tokenized.
So remember that scenario I told you about my mom? When she said, if you're the only one in the room, time to shine. So you don't approach that only one, if you will. So there's the paradigm shift.
Sure.
Shifting the negative paradigm about being the only one, right? But acknowledge that. I'm not trying to go here. But you got to understand, there's not many of you here that I can talk to, and
everybody else in my department is white, so I don't know how to navigate
and so be honest, say I trust you. You make it personal. I trust you. You got kids, I got kids. We got work to do. I'll use my access, but I need your support to really create this opportunity. You'll be surprised. You'll get, I think, a positive response, but you be honest that I know this may look like this. This ain't where I'm going.
Gotcha.
This is bigger than us. I need alignment. We need to create alignment. How do we become, what's the word I'm looking for? How do we, allies? And so maybe you all come together and you just quietly, you don't even call it that. You know you're developing an ally group. They don't know that's what you're doing. Sometimes, and so you understand.
I'm going to push back to one myself.
Yes.
Because I had good intentions, and this is 4 or 5 years ago, and looking at seeing those numbers. And I told myself, well, I'm going to go out and mentor a few more students. But I have my shortcomings, because then the daily routine of teaching, assessment, and at the end of the year, I'm finding out that I have not taken the time. It has not been a priority for me.
Right.
And so I cannot really look out and expect anyone else to make it a priority, because we have things that we need to do as a faculty, and so I guess my take is that I'm using that as a cop-out.
It's not.
In
It's a
way,
reality.
and it's the reality where the intentions don't match, and maybe by having a group and a support
That's
structure
exactly
in
what
place
it
that
is.
we could.
You can't do it by yourself. The elephant is huge. It's in the room, and so you gotta take baby bites. But if you wanna really devour that leg within a short period of time, you gotta have, okay, I'll work on this foot part, you work on that leg part. I'll work, at the end, so there's a strategic planning piece that has to get involved, right? There's a strategy to this. This is our current state. This is our desired state. Here's the gap that we need to close. How much of this gap can we actually do within this semester year or this year? How many people do we require? Usually when I'm building a strategic plan with somebody like this, I call it a prioritization matrix, because if everything's a priority, nothing is. And so we look at, okay, what's the criteria for really making this the go, no-go? How many resources are required is usually one of the things I consider. How much time is involved? What can we do the fastest? And how much money is involved? And so those may be some of the things you think about when you put this whole list out of some of the things we can do, but you can't do everything. Choose the thing that's going to take the least amount of time, least amount of money, and the fewer resources, or resources you can control. Because in that space, you create wins, and wins create encouragement to go on and try another win. And that's really where you are, your success stories. You were going to ask me something.
So, Lindsay, you started to say that the you're looking around at the number of people who came to this. Did you have like a end of that thought? Were you thinking about your collegiality? 'Cause
Nancy sent some emails out.
and then, I'm sorry, can I just finish that? And then I was also just curious, like, is there any strategic, I mean, are there any groups like that exist? I mean, there must be for some things, like those, right? I mean, there's gotta be something on the end.
Thank you, I've got it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so
Well,
we were
did I at
starting
least
to-
answer some of your questions?
It's a profitable hour,
Was it? Very good. Thank you. I
sorry.
know we gotta get rid of.
Yeah, we've got half an hour before you're on.
3:30, but we can set up at
Okay.
like 3:10.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we got
I was afraid
time.
it was at 3.
No, we got time. I didn't schedule that back to back. I give us 30 minutes.
I guess, one of the things, maybe it's timing as an issue in terms of availability. So one of the struggles I had is looking at the calendar of events and the things that I need to do and everything else. And I said, okay, I have to carve out time, but then it comes at a cost of something else to have meaningful discussion. And then the implementation is even harder, because I'll sit here and I'll be like, this is a great idea. And then from a strategic level, how do I align this to a strategic goal at an institutional level? And so
How many?
I disagree. I think that there's only this group here because the majority, when you're talking about STEM faculty, you have to factor in that science has this culture of we all think we're objective. And so nobody thinks, I think that many of my colleagues look at a workshop for diversity in STEM and they think, well, I'm objective in my classes. There's no possible way that I could learn anything from this. I'm just going to, and it'll all work itself out with time or something. I think that you're really fighting this.
That's why, that's why you have to use the data, because we are scientists and mathematicians and computational experts, and we have to use the data, because just as you've described, you're absolutely accurate, but it's hard to deny the data. Even in your objectivity, we still only see this many people of color moving into these fields, when historically, people of color have been in these fields. You only see these many women in these fields or coming into these fields, where historically women and women of color have been in these fields. You got to use the data. So even in your objectivity, and we're not denying that you can be objective, we're just wondering if you can be realistic and honest.
Do you have access to that? I was just thinking, one of the guys that is going to be on the panel in a little bit is Denzel Wright. We had him as an intern a couple of years ago. He's a Pinckney fellow. He's very bright. But he started as a marine science major, and his advocate sort of was like got him through the application process or helped him out becoming a Pinckney Scholar was a woman who did a lot of outdoor stuff with him. He wanted to be a marine biologist. He came in here and he dropped out after a year. And I just wonder, like, do you guys have those numbers? Like, how many people of color enter the sciences and switch majors? Because I'm trying to figure out, like,
Yes,
in
that
this
retention
space,
piece.
in this science, you know, like for who we're talking about white students mostly, and we're talking about, you know, just science education. Because there's things that the university needs to do, and then there's like, what can, you know.
Well, and actually, and I don't have the current numbers, but we did an internal review in biology. These numbers are old, it's about 10 years ago now. But at the time, the percentage of African American students in biology was higher than the percentage college-wide.
Did they finish?
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, yeah, because
But I don't
actually,
know if that's still the case, because back then, the colleges actually had a push, and the percentage of African American students has gone up since then, and I don't know if we've tracked in biology or not. Yeah, but we don't do anything, again, there's no departmental discussion of this, there's just a feeling of, well, you know, I teach my classes, I'm of course objective, what else would I be, and
so here's my other question. When a student drops out, what's your process for tracking a student of color when they do drop out? Are you just gone and gone?
they're gone.
So that's a broken, that's a broken place. That's something that needs to be. If somebody has dropped out of school, you need not through an email, with the exception of using the email to set up an appointment, you need face-to-face. What's happening? Because the conversation needs to shift from they've dropped out to how do we get you back? What do you need from us to make you successful? Because they'll tell you. I felt by myself, I couldn't get any support from my professors. No one would study with me. The old exams would circulate and nobody included me in those study sessions and things like that. You were talking about you personally and your time constraints. How about, here's an opportunity, it's a win-win. Identify your students of color and bring them into your faculty space in the sense that just delegate something to them, some small. Students just want to be where you are, you know? And so if you say, hey, on Tuesdays, you know, I don't have a lot of time, but I do have these tasks, are you willing to help me out? During that time, we might be able to talk. You'll be surprised. Come do your homework in my office during that time.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
So
you know?
we'll have a student who will come to the afternoon panel. He's one of our computer science and student SSM ambassadors, who was one of the students who came in, did not have, and the reason I do this is I remember coming to the College of Charleston, not having any support. I had Maria Richardson, who was my academic advisor for 4 years, who helped me through. So I would not be back here without her help. And
See
would not
that?
have made it.
And tell those stories.
Those stories.
Yeah.
But it does mean, you know, having those student role models also to
Yeah.
mentor other students and building capacity.
That's what
And
it
if you
is.
were right on target, you need to have other students involved and not only faculty to create the.
It's very important. When I was a physics major, Dr. Vincent was the department head. I would just be in his office. He'd come in and he'd say, Massey, you're in here again? And I would just say, I like this desk. But he never stopped me. You know, other students would come in and he just made his office available for us. Because the physics kids, we were like the isolated kids on the campus a lot of times, you know. Because, but it made a difference. And if I had a question, if he couldn't help me, tell me what to do. And how important was that? When I was in grad school, I was transitioning from undergrad into graduate, and I had one more class to finish. So I was finishing one undergraduate class while I had already been accepted into grad school. So I'm taking this undergrad class while I'm finishing up graduate classes. And so, and that undergrad class is actually at this university that I'm leaving. So it was Dr. Vincent, because I had to start, in order to, I talked about that Department of Energy Fellowship, I had to start on time in graduate school in order to get what I was awarded it, but there was this condition attached. And I was like, oh, but Dr. Vincent, I have one more class and I'm not done. He was the one that picked up the phone and said, hey, Howard University, I got this student here. There's no way you're going to let her lose this fellowship over some undergrad, class. And